Okay, if we move on to page 5 of the notes here, we're going to carry on with the rest of the session here. So in developing your office's template, and what I've done for firms when they've asked me to do that for them, is I will often start off with the out-of-the-box architectural template, and I will move through, just going alphabetically, through all of the different families that are listed under the annotation families folder. Customize them one at a time, load them back into the project, and carry on. So, for instance, with the grid head circle, I'll open it up, make the change that the firm wants for their graphics. Now, with the grid head, looking at the top of page 5, it's a very simple process. You set the radius of the circle that you want. You customize the font and the size of the text that's used inside, and you load it back into the project. So if I also wanted to change the font on this thing to Swiss 721, I just go down and find that, change the font, and then load it back into the project. And I'd overwrite the one that's here. Grid head solved. And as it says in the notes there, whatever the farthest geometry is away from the circle, so like the circle itself defines the farthest most point of geometry in this family, and Revit trims your grid line against that geometry. So grid heads are quite simple. Now let's look at section heads. So I'm going to go down here and choose section head filled, and I'm going to open this one up. Just right click and edit it. So I'm working with the default architectural template. I've just scrolled down to the annotation symbols, and I've expanded it, and now I'm going down to the section head filled, and I'm going to right click and edit it. Now, when you're working with these templates, Revit, for some reason, turns off the reference planes. So if you go into the visibility settings for this family and you turn on reference planes, you will see what we have in our notes. Now, the sim text that you see there is turned on when you folks use the reference other view feature when you're adding a view in Revit. So you know when you're creating a section and you hit the little checkbox, reference other view. When you do that, Revit turns on this text, SIM, which means similar. So that's an architectural convention. SIM means that the section that you're looking at isn't the exact section of this location. It's a similar section to looking at this location. So that's often used if you're repeating a section view somewhere else in the project. So this one here, I'll just leave it. Now, if you look on page 5 at the notes, you'll notice that the text for the 1 is larger than the text for A101. So what I like to do is make the text for my for the number of the drawing a little bit larger, and the text for the page number a little bit smaller. So here what I'll do is I'm going to just show you folks what you see on this on the screenshot in the notes, and I'm just going to make this 5/64 of an inch, change the text size, and hit OK. This gives the text more room inside the bubble, and if you folks are paying really close attention, you can see that that text is actually a little bit squished because it's actually Arial narrow. So if you're using the Swiss 721 font series, they've actually got a condensed font as well. So Swiss 721, there it is, condensed. And that one, this squishes the text a little bit closer together. So that's what that looks like. There's Arial, and you can also use Arial narrow, which is also a condensed font. So there's your 5/64 text below, 3/32 above. I think in the example you see there, that's probably 1/8 of an inch text size, so I'll rename this. So it's 1/8 inch as well. So that's kind of the text sizing that you're seeing there. You can see my sim text also got larger. There we go. Make it small again. Now also pay attention to the line weight of the circle around the edge and the line weight of the line in between the page number and the view number. So what I've done is I've asked for a heavier line weight around the outside. Now, when we talked about window families, we talked about how window families have their own subcategories. So with a window, you've got the parent category window, and you've got frame, mullion, you've got glass, you've got trim, and so on. On the Manage tab inside this section head family, we've got object styles. So inside the section marks parent category, we've got these subcategories, and you can see they all have their own line weights. So what I've done is the bubble around the outside I grab that line and I switch it to medium lines, and it just bumps up the line weight. I just got to try and find it here. There it is there. And I've bumped up the line weight for my section head. So now I've got a nice thick boundary around the outside, just a little bit thicker, like maybe 0.35 millimeter for the line weight. And then I've still got a nice light line weight, say 0.15, 0.18 millimeter for the line in between the two. So it just gives it a little bit more, a little bit of a bump in the graphic department. Now, if you were finding that the size of this graphic is too large, if you want to make it larger or smaller, you have to keep the right reference plane where it is. Now Revit does have a template for section heads. And in this note, it says, do not move the horizontal and the right reference plane. Okay, so now what? Well, here's the deal. If I wanted to make this circle, so instead of being, 8/32, I wanted it to be 7/32. So 7/16 across. So I think this is 1/2 inch right now. So if I want to make this whole graphic smaller, what I'd need to do is move the left reference plane over. And then what I'd have to do is size everything and move it all over. This will obviously take a few minutes to completely sort out. And I'd have to move my text over, and I'd have to alter the shape of these filled regions, slide everything over. So the point being, you would keep the right reference plane and the horizontal in place, and then just adjust everything else. That's how section heads work. So once I had got this to the point where I've got it where I want graphically, again, working with the out-of-the-box template, I'll just load this thing back in and overwrite the one that's here. So now I've dealt with my section head filled. I'd have to deal with the section head open for use on partial sections. Now let's look at the callout head. So if you're working with the out-of-the-box template, again, you have to turn on the reference plane so you can see where they're at. With callouts, the symbols for the callouts, there's only the two reference planes that intersect, so there's actually very little to worry about here. What I'd like to do is make my callout head so it has a nice heavier graphic around the outside. So same thing. Wait, what's going on? So this callout head doesn't have a subcategory like my section head did. So here when I edited my section head and I went to manage and then object styles within my section family, my section head family, medium lines was here. But why isn't it here? It's okay, we'll go add one. Manage, object styles. So here what we can do inside our callout head family is click on the callout head parent category and add one. It's like adding a layer to a block. We'll use the same nomenclature, medium lines, and we'll give it a line weight of 3. So now that we've added it here in object styles, it'll be available to us when we go and work on our callout head. So click, click. There it is. So now I've got that heavier line on the outside. Now, these would all have to be, I want these to all look exactly like the ones in my section head family here. So I'm going to see if I can Control C and Control V, copy them in. Damn it. Can't do it. Wait. Watch this trick. This is a section head, right? You guys remember how in family categories you could take a family and change it from being generic model and turn it into a door? Same thing here. Now, the only gotcha is that these reference planes aren't in the right position. So why did I do this? Well, I did it so I could copy these labels over to my other family here. I just changed their category so I could paste them in. Dirty Tricks 101. So I can just delete these guys now. Actually here, let me grab the circle too so I've got something to reference everything by. Control C, Control V. There. So now that I've got all this stuff here, I can move it into place. There. And delete the other text that's there. Do you guys understand what I just did there? It's a little bit of sleight of hand here. So the trick for this one is in my section head family, I've got my I want consistency between all of my graphics. I want my page number and my view number to all be in the same place, whether it's a section head or a callout head. Now Revit wouldn't let me copy these labels from my section head into my callout head because they're two separate categories. So I was like, okay, I'll take my section head, go up to family category, and tell Revit this is a callout head. So then Revit's like, oh, okay, it's a callout. Now you can Isn't that dumb? I mean, that's software for you. So now I was able to copy and paste this stuff over. So now the boundary of this thing, I want it to be medium lines. There we go. Oh, whoops. I want my similar text to be same thing, in exactly the same place. So now my section head, or my callout head rather, has exactly the same fonts, exactly the same line weight, exactly the same position of all of my fonts, so it looks exactly the same whether it's a section head bubble or a callout head bubble. Load it back into the project. So that's how those work. So they're pretty straightforward. Over to page 6. Now we're going to look at the elevation symbols. Now this is a convoluted process. I'll explain it on the board. And I don't quite understand why the developers have made us go through this particular process. But once you understand it, it's fairly straightforward. These symbols, the elevation tags that you see in your plans, it used to be that you only had two choices for their shape. You could have a square box with a pointer, or you could have a circular box with a pointer. That was it. So for about 15 years, well maybe not that long, but close to it, many years in Revit's existence, you could only have these two different symbol choices. And for years and years and years, we were asking Autodesk, please give us the ability to change the symbols. Lots of firms have lots of different ways that they have their elevations appear. Some firms have a little symbol that looks like a heavy little arrow. It looks like this. It's all filled in, and then they've got the number of and then the page that it sits on. That's what their elevation tag looks like. All kinds of different notations out there. And the reason that Revit didn't change it was because the particular programmer who built these into Revit had left in 2003. And everybody's like, I'm not touching this code because it might break something. So many of you guys are in software development. Somebody might go in and change how you can, make those symbols look like, and then doors don't work anymore. I'm not kidding. That's how software development goes. I don't even know how those people stay alive. It's so insane. You write some new code and something else completely unrelated just goes, blows up. When I was working with Autodesk, I got the people to get in on some of that stuff, and it's just mind-blowing. So nobody touched it. Everybody's too afraid. Got too much other stuff that clients want done. So finally, they got her done. So let's talk about how it works. So your elevation tags are made of nested families. So you have what do I call this thing? The body. So you've got the body, and that has the page number that the elevation is placed on. That's the body. Then, and it's in its own family. Then you have your pointer, which is in its own family initially, and it has the drawing number. The drawing number for the elevation. So what you do is you open up the pointer family with the body family open in its own separate file, and you nest it in. So the pointer is nested into the body, and then all you have to do is just copy it around to the other four sides. And you don't have to do anything more than that. You just copy and put them on all four sides. That's it. Done. Load it into your project. You're good to go. Well, what about visibility parameters? If I want to, all four of these things going to show up at once in your project? No. Revit automatically builds this into how the families work. You folks know that when you click on one of these bodies, it shows you checkboxes on the other side, so you can create new elevations by just checking on the box. So, when we go look at one of these body families, whether it's the square body or the circle body, that's the family where all the pointers are all in there with the center bit. So let's look at the body square here. There it is. There's the pointer families. Four of them. Just copied around that center thing, and you're done. There's nothing else that you have to do. So if you want, you can start with this one, modify the body so you can change the text size, change the box, and then go and right click on the pointer and change it to suit your liking. One of the firms that I implemented Revit with, this is what their elevation symbol looks like. It looks like a section head. And as it turned out, I could only have the one pointer pointing up and the one pointer pointing down. So this is for their exterior elevation. So it ended up that the offices decided that they would only have the one pointing up inside their body family. So there's only one copy of the pointer in their body family. So what if they want an elevation that looks this way? Well, they grab they select the elevation tag and they rotate it. Okay, right? So to get what they wanted graphically, they got what they wanted. It's just that they couldn't have the little checkbox thing in the middle to turn them all on. For their exterior elevations, anyway. For their interior elevations, they use the square box. So they're happy. They've got their exterior elevation graphic looking the way they want, and they've got the interior elevation graphic looking the way they want. So, what we do is we nest our pointer into the body, and now we have our finished so we would call this the family. So it's got the pointer nested. Pointer is nested in. So that's step one. Step two, load this thing into the project if it's not there already. Right? So you load it into your project so that Revit has access to it. Then, this next dialog box gets my vote as the stupidest dialog box in Revit. Number one, dumb dialog in Revit. The elevation tag dialog box. And some of you are thinking, okay, well, we have a wall tag. A wall tag is the symbol, like the diamond symbol for a wall, right? Yep. What is the elevation tag? It's a fucking stupid dialog. Let me show you, folks. Look at this. Manage. Let's go into a project here. Here we go. So in the project, so we load it in. We go to the Manage dialog box, Additional Settings, and we go down to here to Elevation Tags. So what is an elevation tag? It's a dialog box that points at the family that's going to be used. Okay. So now what? We have this elevation tag. It's now called half-inch square. It points at some family. So it's going to point at the body family that has the pointers nested in. So I remember when they implemented this in Revit, and I was just slack-jawed. I said, really? I've been waiting 12 years and you give me this? Now I have to teach this to everybody and try and put it into some sort of comprehensible package so you guys can understand what's going on. So the elevation tag, you define some sort of name that describes the graphic that's going to be used. This really makes me mad because I really feel like we could have done a much better job of implementing this. And it creates confusion every year for my students. So we've got this elevation tag dialog box, finally. You edit an elevation style to use an elevation tag. So this kind of bizarre purgatory in between dialog box, it simply creates this elevation tag which points to the family, and now your elevation style now points to a tag. Why didn't they, and follow along with me here. So let's go look now at the view dialog box and the elevation command. Here's the elevation command. All right. So in the elevation command, if you don't click on your screen and you immediately go over to edit type, your elevation style points to an elevation tag. So there's the half-inch square right there. If you folks remember, the half-inch square elevation tag, which is a dumb do-nothing dialog box, it simply points to the family. They could have skipped that step and just said here, elevation symbol, and immediately in here, put the name of the family. You know what I'm saying? They could have skipped the step. What's the point of that stupid... Part of the problem is that I've worked in software development long enough to know a dumb thing when I see it, and this is dumb. This is uber dumb. And it's just one more step. It's not a whole lot of work for you folks, but it does create confusions. Because all this elevation tag is, when you put your cursor in the row, it simply points you to that dialog box. And when you click it here, see it pops up that elevation tag dialog box that we saw on the additional settings menu when we drop down to elevation tag. So this is just sort of an in-between dialog box, and all it does is it points at the family. Really strange implementation. So there you have it. That's how elevations are defined. Now, looking at the bottom of page 6, callout tags are defined under the same process. So let's look at that. Now with callout tags, what they do is they call out, or they call up, invoke, I guess, the particular family. Remember we edited that callout head family a few moments ago. The other thing that this dialog box does is it defines the radius of the shoulder of a callout bubble when you draw it on the screen. So here it says 1/8 inch. So when we use the callout command, so this radius that you see here was defined in that callout tag dialog box. Oh, wrong one. Additional settings, callout tags. So if I make this say 1/4 inch, it's going to make that shoulder, that radius at the corner, even bigger. There. Now, if you want to change the line weight of your callouts, that's in, I think it's in object styles. Nope, it's in line styles. Additional settings, line styles, is that it here? Oh, callout boundary. I was looking right at it. There it is. So it's not callout heads, it's a callout boundary right there. So if I wanted to make it a little bit thicker and I wanted to make it like a lighter gray, so if you want to make your callout heads so that they're a little easier maybe to see on the screen than just a simple black line like everything else in Revit, in your object styles you can go to the callout boundary, switch it to something like a 6, and there you can see your callout boundaries. Now, you know, it might be a graphic that's a little easier to pick out from all the other black lines on your screen. So over on page 7, there's callout styles for elevations, and there's callout styles for sections, and there's callout styles for plans, which are separate from each other. So those can be defined on your own time. One of the things I do want to point out, and this is something that I point out in the intro class, and I'll bring it back to your attention. There's very few gotchas in Revit. One of the ones we talked about in the first class is that you must draw your project within a 10-mile radius of the project base point. That's gotcha number 1. You don't want to mess that up. The second gotcha that you can really paint yourself into a corner is with the callout tool. and it is this. When you are creating your callout, now this isn't in these notes, it's in the week 1 notes from the intro course, in fact, but it's worth repeating. When you create a callout, you must choose whether it's a detailed callout or a floor plan callout. So here in the properties palette, when you're drawing the callout, you choose whether it's floor plan or detail, because you're committing. Once you choose floor plan or callout, you draw the callout, you cannot change it afterwards. And this only applies to callouts. Sections you can change. Elevations, you can change it. So you can change this elevation to an interior elevation right now, no problem, no injury. But if I draw a floor plan callout now, I cannot go back later and switch it to a detailed callout. There's no going back. And likewise, if I start off creating a callout and I use the detail style callout, I can't come back later and change it to a floor plan callout. Again, this relates to someone who was a developer with Revit and has long since left, and nobody wants to change the code because it just breaks stuff. So if you were drawing and you used a detailed callout when you're drawing it around a stair because you want to make a stair plan, it's not going to look right. And if you use a floor plan callout when you're trying to do some detailing of a window jamb, well then this detail shows up in your floor plans instead of in your detail list. And you can't change it later either. So that's gotcha number 2 in Revit. And there's no getting out of that. It'd be just a case where you have to delete it and redraw it. So don't let that happen to you. Okay, so as you are getting this stuff together, you're going to create a template file, page 10. So I just skipped 2 section tags because it's very much the same as the elevation tag situation. And so what you're going to do is as you're getting this document together, this template that's got all of your title blocks and your print settings and your annotations all created and your print setups and all that stuff, save this someplace on your network as you're putting it together. Then what you want to do is point Revit to it in the options dialog box. So we showed this at the very beginning on the File Locations tab. Add an entry for this new callout and then put it at the top of the list so it'll be there when you start a new project in Revit. Another thing that you can do is customizing the project browser. We will talk about that in the next class. What that allows you to do is to create subfolders in your list of plans. So on big jobs, you might have a series of building permit drawings that are separate from your development permit drawings. So you may need to maybe resubmit your development permit drawing at some point because changes have been made during the building permit process that necessitate a resubmission of your development permit drawings. So you can have a folder called DP drawings, and then you can have a folder called building permit drawings, and then you can have a folder called construction drawings. If they're separate, usually they're not. But you can have these top level folders that you can add to your project browser, and that's something that you might want to build into your template so that people don't have to think about that later. They can already have those folders built in there. General tabs, this is still in the options dialog box here, so file and then options. So on the general tab, there's just things like your automatic save time 30 minutes, syncing with central 30 minutes, your username for when you're using work sets, and some other stuff here about the journal files. Actually, these journal files are really interesting. While you folks are working, Revit is keeping track in the background. It records all your commands into a text file. And if Revit were ever to crash, you can actually, if you can find that text file, it's in the journals folder in Revit, you can Google it and find out how. You can close Revit down, drag the journal file, which is a text file, drag it on top of your Revit icon on your desktop, and watch as Revit will redraw your project in front of your eyes. Now, sometimes it'll get you right back to the point where Revit crashed, and then you can just keep going. So sometimes that works out. Graphics tab. Fairly important. You do not need, for those of you who are interested in such things, you actually don't need workstation graphics in your computer. So I'm using a gaming laptop, not because I like the game, but because it's got a decent enough graphics card to run Revit on it. So a consumer graphics card can run Revit just fine. A gaming graphics card is just fine. So here there's some checkboxes that just allow you to speed up or improve the graphics on your screen. So between graphics and the hardware tab, this allows you to use Windows hardware acceleration for graphics called Direct3D. So if that box is available to you, you should check it. So it'll just make, especially in 3D, it will speed up the performance of Revit on your screen. Transfer project standards, what this will allow you to do is if you had a project that's missing some dimension styles because someone didn't start with the right template in your office, bottom of page 11, you can bring those text styles and dimension styles from your template into a project that's lacking those things, and I'll leave it at that. Talked about keyboard shortcuts, page 12. Let's look at title blocks. So if you are creating a title block for your office, there are templates for this process. So I'm just going to close these other files down here. So if you go to the new title block feature under the new menu, there's a series of different page sizes that are provided to you. So we'll start with 36 by 24 here. So what you can do is you can import the AutoCAD drawing from your office and lay it out on top of the title block template. What you folks see here, those lines that are going around the edge, represent the actual physical size of the sheet. So 24, so you can see the dimension there, 24 inches by 36 inches wide. Now, I don't know if you folks have ever had this situation where you're printing with a printer so you've got a 36-inch wide roll of paper coming out of your plotter. And you've got a 24 by 36 sheet. So you go to print and you expect the long edge of the title block to come out on the sheets. There's your title block on the right-hand side, and that's the way you hope it'll come out of your plotter. Instead, what happens is that Revit decides, or the plotter decides, it's going to print it 24 inches wide and leave you a nice 12-inch wide strip. You get to trim off yourself for 30 sheets. And the reason that these sorts of things happen is that you send the print job to the plotter, and in the print job, detects that there's some geometry, like maybe some of the lines from your title block or something like that, that are outside of the margins on the printer, which are usually about 3/4 of an inch all the way around. So the printer's like, okay, well, I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to rotate your plot 90 degrees so that all that geometry will come out on the paper for you. That's like, great. How do we stop that from happening? Well, what we need to do is to ensure that we don't put any geometry inside that 3/4 inch zone all the way around the paper. The other thing, of course, that we don't want to happen is we don't want to have geometry truncated. Like, we don't want lines to be cut off from our title block when we print it. So here's the first problem. The template that's given to you has geometry black lines right at the edges of the sheet, that is patient zero. This is the problem. So what we need to do before we import our AutoCAD title block is to take these lines around the edges of the title block template and switch them to invisible lines. So when you're looking at your title block, you can have lines inside the title block right at the edges of the sheet, but don't make them anything but invisible lines. So your lines at the edge of the sheet that define the title block's actual size should be invisible lines. Why? Because when you load this into the project, these lines won't appear and they won't print. So now what we can do is we can offset our next border for our title block here, and we can offset it by 3/4 of an inch. So when we draw these lines here, I just hit the space bar to offset it inside. So now I've got the invisible lines at the edge of the sheet, and then I've got my actual printed lines offset far enough inboard from the edges that my plotter is never going to do that rotate thing with the print job. When you use this title block in your project and you pass your cursor over one of the lines in this title block, it will ghost in those invisible lines. You'll see them just while you've got your cursor hovering over the title block. So that way you can still see where the physical edges of the sheet are when you're using this title block in the project, but it's not going to create that problem where your plotter rotates your sheets. Now, a discussion about the different title block sizes in your office. Now, you can see here with the example that's shown on the screen here, this is one office where I set up where I kept the bottom left corner of the title blocks at the same point in the family. So back in Revit here, when I did this one office's title blocks, I made this as a constant point and then just created all the different sheet sizes, and this point was always in the same place. As it turns out, that's actually a bad idea. It makes more sense if you use the bottom right corner as the point that's constant, and then if you change your title block size, the text part of the title block is always going to be in the same place. Because usually when we put our views, we put all our views on close to the title block, right? And then if we need more or less space, we want to start populating that space close to the binding edge. So I would make all the title blocks in your office, if you're switching between, arch D and arch E and arch E1, make the bottom right-hand corner constant between. So when you're modifying these title blocks, just stretch, at the top and the left-hand side for your different title block sizes. And if your office already has Revit title blocks, I'd go back and change them. Make sure they're all at the same point here. There's a little suggestion. Revit does have a 0, 0 location. So if you look at page 12, second last paragraph, last few sentences, Revit does have a 0, 0 location in your sheet, which you can see if you import a circle drawn in AutoCAD at 0, 0 and bring it origin to origin in the title block. That'll give you a constant point of reference between your different title blocks. So that way when you're setting up your sheets, you can see that 0, 0 point within your title block family. It's funny that Revit doesn't have an icon for 0, 0, but it usually doesn't care. And in fact, Revit doesn't care where 0, 0 is in your title block when you load it into your project, because Revit will just center it on its own print page, and there's very little for you folks to worry about. So it's not like, printing where in AutoCAD where you have to find the patron saint of successful printing in AutoCAD and rub your beads together and say if you hail Carl Bass or whatever his name is, his CEO, and pray that it prints. So in Revit, you just Control P and away you go. So you put in your labels and text, and off you go. One of the things that is cool about title blocks is the revision schedule. Let's go over to page 13. Now I'm going to show you folks a finished project here in Revit. Where are we at here? I need Merton. Oh, it's in 2019. Phooey. Second here, I'm going to steal it off the BCIT network. I don't have it on the BCIT network. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, so here is a project done that has the revision schedule in play. And we're going to show you how it works in conjunction with the title block. Okay, so if we look at the revision schedule on this one, it's sideways, but you can see that there are a number of revisions on this page, but they skip numbers. So I've got revisions 2, 3, and 6 out of the entire set. There are some other pages here, so this one's got revisions 2, 3, and 6. This one has revisions 2, 3, 6, and 7. So this title block shows when a particular change has affected a particular sheet. How does this work? Well, on the Manage tab under Additional Settings, we have Revisions. Manage, Additional Settings, Revisions. So in here, you can add the milestones or the different points at which revisions occur. So we've got our development permit, our building permit, tender set, addendum number 1, then we had some comments come back from the city, finally we had our IFC set, and then there was some additional information that was added during the tendering process. So in this dialog box, we define the different revisions that have occurred and the date at which they were added. And now what we can do is in our drawings, we can now add bubbles for those revisions. So on a certain plan here, if there's been some changes in here that have been triggered by a particular revision, on the Annotate tab, we can go and grab the Revision Cloud tool. And once you define those revisions on the Manage tab, your Revision Cloud will now allow you, in the Properties palette, before you draw the revision, you can click the revision that's in play here. So in this case, it's the latest one here with the interiors information. And now I can draw that revision cloud around the area where the change has occurred because of this revision. Having done that, I can now use the tag tool to tag this revision, and you can see it's already got the number associated with that revision. So there's the revision number. So if the revision number that I picked was wrong initially, here I can switch it, and it's hidden from this view. So I'll just go back a step here. So if you choose a particular renovation or a particular revision number to use when you're putting the revision cloud in, then the tag will automatically show you the number of that revision. Now, when this view is dropped onto a sheet, the sheet will automatically show. This thing only had revision 6 on it before. So as soon as I drop that 7th revision on here, so there's the cloud right there, Revit automatically added that revision to the sheet. Cool beans. Works like a charm. how do you get your revision schedule on your title block so that it picks up on the revisions from your project? So what you do inside your title block, from the View tab, so we're looking at the top of page 13, from the View tab in the title block family, View tab, choose Revision Schedule. You will need the revision number, revision date, and revision description fields added to the schedule. So if you folks look up on the screen, I don't need revision sequence, so I'll remove that one. I want the number and the date, so the date I'm going to move upwards. Number, date, description. Those are the three fields that are needed. Now for sorting, I need to sort, of course, by the revision number, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And itemize every instance. So that's the first paragraph of page 13. For your formatting, you can figure out what justification you want. So for your revision number, typically it's center justified. For your date, probably left. And for your description, probably left. Just the revision number. That would be center justified. Now, you probably don't want a really long heading like this for the revision number, so I might just put in NO for the heading. And then for the revision date, probably just date is fine, or even uppercase date. And then for your revision descriptions, you could just say revision, like comments or whatever, description. So now on the Appearance tab, you can decide whether the schedule populates downwards. Some firms have revision 1 at the bottom and then it goes upwards from there. So decide whichever your firm uses and then hit OK. Decide if you want grid lines around it or not, hit OK. And there's our revision schedule. So the revision schedule appears under schedules and views, like you can see here, revision schedule. And how do you get this now on the sheet? Well, you go back to the sheet view, and just like you do in a project, you drag and drop the revision schedule onto your sheet. Now, the revision schedule that you see in the drawings here, there's no grid lines around it and there's no headers. It's just the information. So that means in revision schedule here on our sheet in our title block, if we go back and look at its properties here, tricky thing, if you want to see the properties of your revision schedule, you actually have to click it in the project browser inside your title block family. You'll notice that when I went to just open it here, see how there's no settings for me to change the fields or the formatting or the appearance or anything like that? The only way to get at that stuff is to click once on revision schedule in the project browser. Super, you know, like that's the kind of advanced stuff that can make you crazy because you don't know how to get at some of this stuff. So what's going to happen is that for our, which is it here, we're not going to show any grid lines, we're not going to show title, and we're not going to show headers. So to get the exact look like we see here, this is just text inside the title block. It's not from the schedule. So this ends up what we're looking at on the sheet. Where's my revision schedule? Oh, there it is. That's my revision schedule. So to do exactly what you saw in that firm's view, I rotated it 90 degrees. Oh wait, it didn't do it. What? And I think that's because I have to hit the rotation on sheet here. So 90 degrees counterclockwise. There you go. Pretty crazy stuff. There's some videos on it on YouTube if you want to go through and go through the process. So these little triangles here allow you to adjust the width of the columns. So you just fine tune it until you get the columns for your revisions lining up underneath the text that you've put in for your title block. Okay, that is it for tonight. If any of you guys want to look at one of these title blocks so you can see how it's done, I can freely give you this, this title block so you guys can reverse engineer it. All right, that's it for tonight, folks. So we will see you next week.